I think I need to talk about my academic subject, and I think it's long overdue a serious rethink. So let's begin with the obvious. The UK Supreme Court has not abolished religious education in Northern Ireland. It's done something subtler, wiser, long overdue. It's reminded the state that RE is supposed to be education, not quiet catechesis by another name. At the heart of this case is a little girl known only as JR87 who came home from school saying prayers over her snacks, believing that God made the world because her teachers had told her so, and doing so with the sweet confidence of a child who assumes adults present truth, not a particular tradition's truth. Her parents, secular in conviction, discovered that withdrawing her would leave her as the only child in the class removed from collective worship. They feared stigmatization, and the Supreme Court accepted that fear as entirely reasonable. And in doing so, it confronted a larger structural problem. Northern Ireland's RE syllabus begins with the revelation of God, not belief in God, not the idea of God, but revelation as if we are already standing inside a theological worldview. At primary level, the curriculum is exclusively Christian. Only at post-primary does anything else appear. And even then, the syllabus was last revised in 2007, the joint production of the Department of Education and 4 Christian churches. In 2025, the classrooms do not reflect that narrow ecclesial map. Nearly 1/3 of pupils in controlled schools come from other faiths or none. And the Supreme Court ruling rests on a simple principle. RE must be objective, critical and pluralistic. Anything else slips into indoctrination. The Court of Appeal had tried to draw a distinction between non-pluralistic teaching and indoctrination, but the Supreme Court rather elegantly swept that away. These are, as Lord Stevens wrote, two sides of the same coin. If you teach one tradition as truth and all others as footnotes, that is not information, it is direction, and direction is precisely what the law forbids. What does this mean in practice? The DUP frames this as the defence of Christian foundations. Humanists UK celebrates it as historic, but the judgment is not an attack on Christianity, nor a victory for secularism. It is a reminder that RE should never have been about producing believers, it should have been about producing thinkers. Religious education should be one of the richest subjects in the curriculum. Properly taught, it's not the cosy recital of familiar hymns or an introduction to how cultures make meaning, how texts shape communities. It's about how cultures develop, how texts have defined us, how ritual forms identity, how people wrestle with transcendence, how ethics and purpose are defined. It's about anthropology, philosophy, literature, history, psychology, and theology intertwined. It opens the door to other cultures. It also forces us to inspect the scaffolding of our own assumptions. The tragedy is that RE is too often flattened into a pedantic listing of festivals or a timid, vague stroll through being kind. Or worse, it becomes confessional teaching wrapped in the language of neutrality. The disaster with religious education is that so many people who are drawn to teaching it have already come from a particular and defined faith, and that is their point of view against which other things are measured. The Supreme Court has frankly done Northern Ireland a favour by calling time on all this nonsense. To be clear, Christian teaching can absolutely be studied within a pluralistic curriculum. The Bible is a monumental cultural text, and without it, without an understanding of the biblical stories and the biblical structure, we have great difficulty understanding, for example, Shakespeare, Milton, Dickens. It's a great platform into literature. Christianity is a major intellectual tradition, but to present it as an absolute truth to 4-year-olds in a compulsory lesson is to confuse education with initiation. And as this case shows, it places minority or non-religious children in an impossible social position. No child should have to step outside the door alone to preserve her family's convictions. This judgment forces 2 overdue conversations. First, it compels Northern Ireland to redesign its RE curriculum so that Christianity is taught alongside other religions and non-religious philosophies from the earliest years, not as competing truths claiming to be enforced or avoided, but as traditions to be understood. This makes the classroom more honest and society more resilient. Second, it obliges the state to articulate what RE is actually for. If it is merely for transmitting a preferred religious worldview, then it cannot be compulsory. But if it is about equipping young people to understand religious ideas critically, or to interpret texts, to examine ethical traditions, to recognize diversity, to reflect on their own beliefs, then it becomes indispensable. Of course, there are religious schools where this particular line of thought would be inappropriate. Religious schools have a right to teach their own religious traditions, and the parents subscribe to that religious philosophy. The irony is that many faith leaders understand this better than the politicians. Bishop Donald McCohen responded with admirable, I think I've said his name wrong, by the way, with admirable calm, saying this was a chance to it's so embarrassing because I've just got my Irish passport. I'm very proudly Irish, but saying that this is a chance to rethink the curriculum and create something healthier for a changing society. But others hunker down in a defensive crouch, insisting that Christian foundations must be protected as though plurality were erosion rather than enrichment. Northern Ireland is a post-conflict society where faith traditions have shaped identity, politics and community boundaries, and that reality does not disappear by teaching children about Islam, Judaism, Hinduism or humanism. It becomes easier to discuss. It becomes less brittle. A pluralistic RE curriculum is not a threat to Christianity. It is a safeguard against sectarianism, and the Supreme Court, in essence, has given the executive an opportunity. Whether they seize it remains uncertain, but the old model where the revelation of God was assumed rather than examined cannot survive this ruling. RE must grow up. It must stop being either devotional or vacuous. It must become a subject that encourages intellectual curiosity, cultural literacy, and genuine engagement with difference. And in doing so, it might finally become what it always should have been, the study of what humans believe, why they believe, how those beliefs shape the world. Not indoctrination, not evasion, real education. How, for example, the theatricality of religion informs our architecture and our towns. This ruling will be painted as contentious. In truth, it is simply the law catching up with common sense. And if the Department of Education responds with ambition rather than fear, the children of Northern Ireland may yet receive the RE they deserve, one that opens their minds rather than narrows them.